Picture this. It's late 2026, you're sitting in what looks like a luxury airplane seat. Except you're not going to Paris or Tokyo, you're going up, way up. Through your window, Earth begins to curve, the sky fades from blue to black, and suddenly you're floating. You've just become a space tourist. Sounds incredible, right? Like science fiction finally becoming science fact. Well, here's the thing nobody's really talking about. While companies are racing to make space tourism common, there's a price, and I'm not just talking about the ticket. I'm referring to a cost that could alter our planet forever, measured in rocket fuel, orbital debris, and atmospheric damage. What if opening space to humanity ends up closing it forever? Today, we're diving deep into the 2026 space tourism boom, the incredible technology, and the dark side, the billionaires launching these rockets hope you ignore. Buckle up. So let's rewind for just a second. How did we get here? Remember the original space race? The 1960s, United States versus the Soviet Union. Back then, space was the ultimate flex. It was about national pride, military superiority, and proving whose system was better. When Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon in 1969, it wasn't just one small step for man, it was a giant "we won" message to the Soviets. But here's what's fascinating. After we won, we kind of stopped caring. Moon landings became routine, then expensive, then they were just cancelled. For decades, space became the exclusive domain of governments, scientists, and highly trained astronauts. For normal people like us, it remained a distant dream. Fast forward to the 2000s, and everything changed. Enter the billionaires. Elon Musk started SpaceX with the almost insane goal of making humanity a multiplanetary species. Jeff Bezos launched Blue Origin with his own vision, millions of people living and working in space. Richard Branson created Virgin Galactic to give regular folks, rich folks a taste of weightlessness. And just like that, space wasn't about countries anymore. It became about companies. It became about profit. It became about making space accessible to anyone who could afford the ticket. Now, as we approach the latter half of the 2020s, that vision is becoming a reality. SpaceX has already sent dozens of private citizens into orbit. Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket is gearing up for orbital tourist flights. Even China and India are developing their own space tourism programs. We're talking about hotels in low Earth orbit being planned and moon bases being designed. We are living in an era where space travel is transitioning from impossible to exclusive, and eventually, maybe even normal. But here's where things get interesting, and honestly a bit frightening. Let's talk about the hidden environmental cost. Let's talk rockets. They are beautiful, they are powerful, they are absolutely essential for getting to space, and they are absolutely terrible for the environment. Just think about what it takes to launch a single rocket. The SpaceX Falcon 9 burns through roughly 400,000 liters of rocket fuel. That is enough to fill about 160 average-sized swimming pools. And when that fuel burns, it releases massive amounts of carbon dioxide, water vapor, and other chemicals directly into the upper atmosphere. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but how many rockets are we really launching? Well, in 2023, there were about 220 orbital launches worldwide. By 2026, that number is expected to hit over 300. And if space tourism truly takes off, pun intended, some estimates suggest we could see over 1,000 launches per year by the early 2030s. Here's the scary part. When you burn fuel at ground level, it's bad. But when you burn it in the upper atmosphere, it's much worse. Pollution from cars and factories mostly stays in the lower atmosphere, where rain and natural processes can eventually break it down. Rocket emissions, however, go straight into the stratosphere, the same layer that contains our precious ozone layer, the one that protects us from harmful radiation. And those emissions stay there for years, potentially for decades. A 2022 study found that rocket launches could deplete the ozone layer at rates 50 times higher than we previously thought. Black carbon particles from rocket exhaust can absorb sunlight and heat the stratosphere, which could disrupt our global weather patterns. And the water vapor from those clean-looking hydrogen-fueled rockets, it creates ice clouds that can affect atmospheric chemistry in ways we're only just beginning to understand. Oh, and what about those amazing reusable rockets that everyone celebrates? They are fantastic for reducing costs and waste, no doubt. But they still burn fuel. They still create emissions. Every single flight. So, as we stand on the cusp of this new space age, we have to ask ourselves a critical question. Is the dream of becoming a multiplanetary species worth the potential cost to our home planet? So, you think space tourism is all glamorous, right? Billionaires floating in zero-G sipping champagne while looking down at our beautiful blue marble. Well, I'm here to tell you there's a dark side, a terrifying one, and it's called the space junk apocalypse. Right now, orbiting our planet, there are about 34,000 pieces of debris larger than a baseball. We're talking dead satellites, old rocket pods, and fragments from past collisions. And that's just the stuff we can track. Scientists estimate there are over 130 million smaller pieces, each one a tiny bullet screaming through space at 28,000 kilometers per hour. At that speed, a fleck of paint can crack a shuttle window, a piece the size of a marble. It could obliterate $1 billion satellite, or worse, punch a hole right through the International Space Station. This nightmare has a name, the Kessler syndrome. It was first proposed by NASA scientist Donald Kessler way back in 1978. The idea is simple and horrifying. One collision creates a cloud of debris. That debris then hits other objects, creating even more debris. This triggers a chain reaction, more collisions, more fragments, until low Earth orbit becomes a deadly, unusable minefield of high-speed shrapnel. We could literally trap ourselves on Earth, cut off from space, maybe forever. And what's pouring gasoline on this fire? You guessed it. The new space race, fueled by tourism and commercial satellites. More launches mean more stuff going up. More stuff up there means more things that can break, collide, or just be left to die in orbit. Think about this. In 2021, Russia tested an anti-satellite missile by blowing up one of its own old satellites. That one event created over 1,500 new trackable pieces of junk and hundreds of thousands of smaller, untrackable ones. Astronauts on the ISS had to scramble into their escape pods and shelter for safety. Spacewalks were cancelled. That was a deliberate act. Now imagine it happens by accident. A tourist ship hits a piece of debris. A private space station fails. A whole satellite constellation goes haywire. The more crowded space gets, the higher the odds of a catastrophe. And we are packing it in up there faster than ever before. But beyond the physical danger, there's a deeper, more unsettling question. Let's talk about the inequality of it all. As of today, a quick trip to the edge of space will set you back about $250,000. Want to visit the International Space Station? That'll be over $50 million. Let that sink in for a moment. The price for a few minutes of weightlessness costs more than most people on this planet will earn in their entire lifetime. So, while the super rich get to live out their astronaut fantasies, the rest of us just get to watch from down here. And by the way, we also get to deal with all the consequences. We're essentially privatizing the final frontier, turning it into a playground for the wealthy, while the costs, the rocket pollution, the atmospheric damage, and that terrifying cloud of space junk are shared by every single person on Earth. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a huge supporter of space exploration. I believe humanity's destiny is out there among the stars. The technology developed for space has given us incredible things like GPS, modern weather forecasting, life-saving medical imaging, and so much more. But when the spectacular benefits go to a tiny handful of people, while the very real risks and costs fall on everyone else, that's not progress. That's just selfishness with a really big rocket attached to it. It's something we need to talk about before it's too late. Is there hope? Okay, deep breath. I know this has been heavy, but here's the thing. It doesn't have to be this way. There are solutions. Real, practical solutions that could make space tourism sustainable. They're just not being implemented fast enough. First up, cleaner fuels. Some companies are developing rockets that run on liquid hydrogen and oxygen, which produce only water vapor as exhaust. That's a huge improvement. Others are exploring biofuels, methane from renewable sources, and even electric propulsion for satellites. The technology exists. We just need the will and the regulations to use it. Second, debris removal. Think of them as space janitors. Multiple companies are now working on satellites that can capture and deorbit defunct satellites and other junk. Japan's space agency, JAXA, has tested magnetic tethers. The European Space Agency has missions planned to literally grab dead satellites and bring them down safely to burn up in the atmosphere. We made the mess. We can clean it up. Third, international cooperation and regulation. Right now, space is kind of like the Wild West, but there are growing calls for treaties that limit launches, require companies to plan for how their satellites will be disposed of, and ensure space remains accessible for scientific research, not just for tourism and profit. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 established that space belongs to all of humanity. Maybe it's time we actually acted like it. And finally, public pressure. Companies respond to consumers, you and me, if enough people demand sustainable space travel, if investors prioritize environmental responsibility, and if governments impose things like carbon taxes on launches, then behavior will change. The big question is, will we act before it's too late? So here we are, standing at the edge of a new era, watching as space, the final frontier, finally opens up, not just to astronauts and scientists, but potentially to anyone with enough money and enough wonder. It's incredible, it's inspiring, it represents human ambition at its very finest, but it's also reckless, it's unequal, and if we're not careful, it could cause serious damage to the very planet we're trying to get a new perspective on. The cost of opening space to humans isn't just measured in dollars, it's measured in atmospheric chemistry, orbital sustainability, and the kind of world we're leaving for future generations. It's the difference between becoming a true spacefaring civilization and trashing our cosmic neighborhood before we've even properly moved in. So what do? We can celebrate the achievement while demanding better. We can support space exploration while insisting that it be sustainable. We can dream of the stars while keeping our feet, and our values, firmly grounded on Earth. Because here's the truth. Space tourism is coming. In many ways, it's already here. The question isn't whether humans will go to space. The question is whether we'll be wise enough to do it right. What do you think? Is space tourism worth the cost? Should we pause and regulate, or push forward and innovate? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this video made you think differently about the final frontier, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping our future. Thanks for watching. And remember, space may be infinite, but our chance to explore it sustainably, that window might be closing faster than we think.